And the last hope for identifying many victims of 9/11 rests in the hands of an Ann Arbor company.
It's all ahead on Action News.
We'll see you at 11.
9/11 victims identified by a Michigan company tonight on 7. You're watching WXYZ 7.
I'm Heather Catallo. Coming up, I'll take you inside a local company that's working to identify the victims from Ground Zero. It's a story of cutting-edge technology and incredible compassion, and you'll see it in 10 minutes.
And still ahead, hundreds of families are still waiting for their loved ones to be identified from the World Trade Center attacks. Now, one local company is helping speed up the process. A special report is coming up in just 6 minutes.
While New York City is preparing to build a memorial that will replace the World Trade Center, the work to identify the victims from Ground Zero is far from over. Action News has learned that a local company is helping to identify those victims with some extraordinary computer software. Action News reporter Heather Catallo joins us now with the story. Heather?
Guy, the company is called GeneCodes, and they have tried to stay out of the spotlight, but the work they're doing is so important. I persuaded GeneCodes president to tell us about the project that has changed his life and helped so many others. When their pictures appeared, the country cried with them. Thousands of people, each missing a husband, a mother, a sister, or a friend. For so many families who lost loved ones in the World Trade Center attack, closure still has not come. Many don't even have confirmation that their loved one is dead. For months after September 11th, workers searched Ground Zero and the rubble that was hauled off to a landfill on Staten Island. All told, recovery crews sifted through 1.6 million tons of debris, and they recovered nearly 20,000 body parts. Body parts that had to be identified. It's an overwhelming task in New York.
We're looking for duplicate names in the RM table.
And now, help is coming from a company in Ann Arbor.
What's the symptom?
Howard Cash is the president of GeneCodes Corporation, a cutting-edge company that makes DNA identification software.
This is as close as I will ever come in my professional life to a call to service, a call to national service, certainly.
Of the estimated 2,800 people who died, less than half have been identified. For many of the bodies, DNA matching is the only hope of knowing who perished. That's why GeneCodes' role in this DNA matching process is so important.
No matter how fast we work, there's someone who really wishes we had their answers sooner.
Howard Cash says New York's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, or OCME, contacted him shortly after September 11th.
I thought they wanted some software. I was certainly prepared to donate it.
But New York needed more than software. The medical examiner needed Howard Cash to create a brand new computer program. The OCME knew right away they were facing a DNA matching problem that no one had ever experienced before. In the hysteria that followed September 11th, DNA samples and information provided by families were often duplicated or wrong. Emergency officials were overwhelmed by the crush of information, and there was no computer program in existence that could handle it all.
The biologists and the forensic scientists at the OCME would literally spend weeks with highlighters and pens crossing out things that were duplicates and highlighting things that looked like they were new.
To make order out of chaos, GeneCodes started doing something called extreme programming, where engineers work in pairs. Together, they create computer code that ultimately helps the medical examiner identify victims faster. Here's how the GeneCodes software works. In the New York lab, a scientist looks at a victim's DNA. That scientist then types the results into the computer, and the software compares that piece of genetic material to the thousands of other DNA samples already listed in the computer. The GeneCodes staff has been working endless hours, skipping holidays and weekends to constantly update the software. Every Friday at 6:30 in the morning, Howard Cash gets on a plane and flies to New York. That's where he personally delivers the new software for the coming week. Back in Ann Arbor, the programmers keep track of what works, not only on the computer, but also on sticky notes posted on the wall.
And each week, we try to improve things.
Engineer Jonathan Hoyle doesn't mind the long hours, because every person his software identifies gives one family peace.
Once they know, they can mourn, and once they can mourn, they can move on. And for me, that's very personally rewarding.
What Howard Cash worries about, though, is knowing he's not going to find everyone. Cash had a personal connection to one of the firefighters who died on September 11th. He was desperate to find that hero's remains.
Seeing a flag stretched out not over the coffin, but over the 3 helmets from the 3 firehouses this man had worked at in his career was very tough. And I came out thinking there's got to be a way to squeeze 26 hours out of the next day. You know, just 24 is not enough.
The GeneCode software did ultimately identify that firefighter, and Howard Cash won't give up until he can bring closure to as many families as possible.